Good morning, everybody. This is Laura Peterson. I'm your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So, as usual, lots of great stuff to talk about this week. There's always a lot of things that are going on in real estate. And basically, our market, though, has been very steady in regards to what's going on and everything. Last week, there were 492 homes that sold, which was the end of the month, from September 28th to October 4th, and 400 the week before. So usually at the end of the month, it's up significantly. The median price is at $429, which is down just a smidge, maybe like 4,000 or 5,000 from the week before. So very consistent, staying where we're at between like 425 to 450 is kind of where we're at in regards to that. The inventory actually remained the same this week, which I think is very exciting. I like that. There were 3 foreclosures that sold and 3 short sales. So, when people are out there thinking there's a lot of people that are losing their houses, there's not a lot of them that are. There are a few, but that's what's going on with that. Basically, when we're looking at it, of those 492, 47 of them were under 250, 41 between 250 and 300. 131 between 300 and 400, 90 between 400 and 500, 150 between 500 and a million, and 33 over a million. So because we had that extra little bump, we're still in a normal market. I think we're at about 5 months of inventory last week. And because this is such a short period, this shows 4.22. So basically between 4 and 6 is considered a normal market. So we're definitely there. Now, when you're looking at under 250 for this week, there's 3 months of inventory. Between 250 and 300, it's 2.95. And then 300 to 400, it's 3.3. Then when you get to 400 to 500, it goes to 4.8. 500 to a million is 4.9. And then 6.38 over a million. So in those higher end houses is really kind of where the inventory is at right now. So it's still a little bit of a seller's market, but again, it's very price sensitive with what we've got going on in the market right now. Basically, when you're looking at the list to ask price ratio, we're still at 96.78, which we've been hovering right around 97, so we're still right there. Under 250 was at 95.69, and over a million was at 94.87. And then every other category is in the 97s, which is typical for every week that it happens. So the under 250, because they need work, they have low offers on them, and over a million, because people have choices and that kind of stuff, and they always want to do some upgrades and that kind of stuff in there, is usually what happens. The average days to contract is 73, and the average beds and baths are 4.2 and 2160 square feet. So that's kind of what the scoop is. So this is Lake, Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties all together when it comes down to it. Okay, so looking at condos, townhomes, and villas, there are 143 that sold, up from 89. And the median price on them was $255,000. So $255 versus $429. So about $175,000 difference, plus or minus. And there were no foreclosures or short sales in the condo market that sold, and their inventory decreased by 44, which I think is very awesome. But it's still going to show you that we've got, we're definitely in a buyer's market when it comes to condos. So how they shake down in regards to how everything went, of those 143 house properties, 65 of them were under 250, 23 between 250 and 300, 36 between 3 and 4, 11 between 4 and 5, 8 between 500 and a million, and none sold over a million. So there's 17 on the market over a million. Between 500 and a million, we're at 9 months of inventory, 11 months of inventory when it comes to between 400 and 500, 6.97 between 300 and 400, 6.42 between 250 and 300, and 6.21 under 250. So those three categories between up to 400 are kind of just a little bit over 6. And then we go to 11 months of inventory, but that's not normal. So the end of the month really helped out with those condo sales. 89 days on the market is what the average is on that. And that's kind of what's going on in regards to that. So the condo market is definitely very different than the single family home market when it comes down to it. And I think that a lot of that is condo fees. Now, there's a lot of homes that have additional fees and everything, as you very well know, in Central Florida, because almost everything that was built probably after 1980, for the most part, is in a homeowners association, is what I would say. And some of them in the 80s even had homeowners association, but they're considered optional. And because that's how it started, that it was optional for you to join. And then after that, it became mandatory and everything. There's some parts of the community that some of the HOAs are going away after a number of years, but I haven't seen that too prevalent. Basically, the new thing that's there is that there are CDDs, which are community district developments, that are coming into a lot of the new home communities. So as you're driving around, I was noticing some signs that said no CDD. And you might be thinking, well, I don't even know what a CDD is. And so basically what it is it's considered a community district development, which is a special part of the tax form. So you're going to have of your property taxes. So you're going to have your regular property taxes, and then you're going to have the community district development part of the property taxes if you're in one of those districts. So what happened is that a few years ago that the developers decided that if they could get bonds to float them helping develop this land, and maybe the infrastructure of the streets, maybe the pools or the community amenities and that kind of stuff, they put together a bond in regards to pay for those kinds of things. So when you're in a CDD, community district development, there are two charges. One of them is for the actual bond that was floated for that, to pay that back, and those are usually about a 30-year bond. So those can be paid off, and some people do, especially in a lot of those 55 plus communities. A lot of times they say that the CDD is paid off, and I've noticed that a lot in the villages, that a lot of people advertise that they've paid off the bond. And so there's not just a bond portion, however, there's also a maintenance portion. So the maintenance portion is obviously always going to be there. So when you go into these new communities, they say, oh, our homeowners association is only like $100 a year. But then they might say, but we have a $2,000 CDD, which is the community district development that's added on to the taxes. So that's something that I'm not 100% sure. I should actually look into it a little bit further. But that when the homeowners association takes it over, and you can, kind of decide what homeowner benefits and that kind of stuff that you want to have, and have somewhat control in regards to what the homeowners association is going to charge, or if they're going to exist or whatever. But I'm not sure if that's possible on the CDD. So that's what I'm saying, that I need to do a little bit more research on to find out. But if you are looking for a home, you definitely want to look and see if there is a CDD and what it is and how it operates and all of that kind of stuff. I know there was one area, and it was back in 2008, 9, and 10 when the market was just kind of falling apart. And these houses originally sold for about $350, and they ended up being about $100,000 for a house. And so, you think, oh, that's great, and so I had a couple of people that went in there. I just had one, and I learned, and so I didn't do it again. But basically, they went in there and they thought that they were going to be able to afford the loan because they were able to afford that $100,000 house payment and everything, which was obviously no trouble for them. But there was a $2,000 CDD fee per year. And so as a result of that and that adding it up, that made that house more like, instead of it being 100,000, it was like 150,000. And so that was beyond their budget of what they could afford at that particular time. And so as a result of that, they weren't able to get that house. And so that was really a problem for that neighborhood when it came to selling it, because the taxes were so cockeyed to the house. And so basically, when it comes down to it, you want to make sure that you know what's going on, how to make sure that everything is the way that it should be, and something that you can afford and that you can look at long term. And so that's why I like to talk about it. In order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson, your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So one interesting study that I found this week, that it talks about how 1 in 3 homes being bought in cash in 2025. And this is a Realtor.com analysis, shows that cash buyers are thriving at the high and low ends of the market, as finance buyers remain concentrated in the middle. So nearly 1 in 3 homes sold in the first half of 2025 were bought entirely with cash. According from an analysis with Realtor.com, it highlights how cash buyers ranging from equity-rich households to investors and second home purchasers continue to have outside influence in today's housing market. So nationwide, 32.8% of home sales in the first half were all cash, and that's down slightly from last year, but remains pretty high. So cash buying surged during the pandemic as investors competed for scarce listings, and remains a powerful factor even as the market has cooled a little bit. So who's paying cash? Cash dominates at the extremes of the market. 2/3 of the homes under 100,000, which we don't have here in Central Florida, and more than 40% of the homes over $1 million were bought with cash. With that's over 50% of the homes above $2 million. So basically, that's what's going on. So cash counts most in affordable and second home markets. So the prevalence of cash buyers varies sharply across the country, driven by home prices, buyer demographics, and local market dynamics. So basically, let's see if I can find Florida here. Actually, it says Mississippi and Montana are both in the 40%. Idaho's at 45%. Hawaii's at 44%. Maine's at 44%. So those are the top states in regards to what it is. But Miami is at 43%. And basically that is what I see here. I'm going to have to look and see exactly where we're at in Orlando, and I'll get that by the next segment. But basically, I do believe that when it comes down to it, there is a lot of cash buyers out there. And basically the bottom line is that even if it may not be the end result in regards to what's going on, there's about 20% of the market out there that we find even today that people want to sell their houses without in non-traditional methods. And basically, that's using cash buyers to buy their house. And it's kind of like when you've got a used car. If you're going to go buy a new car, there's certain lots that you can go to, dealers that you can go to, that you can turn in your used car. And as a result of that, you know that you're not necessarily going to get as much money for it. But the convenience, the hassle, how to do it, all of that kind of good stuff completely outweighs the amount that you would make on doing it all yourself, right? So now there are companies that will actually do that on houses as well. And so there's about 20% of the market that participates in that kind of situation. It's a little bit tougher today than it was a few years ago to get the kind of offers that people wanted for cash. In right after the pandemic, basically all of those companies were paying the same thing as any buyer would. And so it was really tough to compete as a buyer. So what they would do is the market was increasing so much that they would buy a house for cash at what the market price was today, and then they would put it on the market 30 days from now, and they would have all of their margins and everything that they needed on it in order to make their profit and everything like that. So now that the market has cooled and the prices are not increasing, we've stayed very steady for the last few years, but the prices have not increased. And so as a result of that, they're not paying the same amount that a regular buyer would pay. And so they're paying, a little bit less, maybe it's about 5 or 10% or whatever. I did find one the other day that is actually paying like 20% less than what the market is, because I had somebody that was interested in it. And so they decided obviously not to go with that 20% drop, but there are companies out there that I deal with all the time that their fee is 5 and 6%. And so basically, if you want to sell to them, then that's the amount of what their fee is. They give all of the profit and everything to you. And, so the way that most of them work is that it's actually called a two-step process. So what happens is they give you the majority of your money right now, like is probably about 85% of the funds that you're going to get, you get right now. They take possession of the home. You're able to move on, and they actually purchase it, and then they might do some upgrades to it, which they agree with you before you sell it to them. What's going to happen? Everybody's in complete agreement. And then they actually go and sell it again. And when they sell it again, you get the remainder of the profits. And everybody has agreed, the owner, the seller, the buyer, all of that kind of stuff. When they go to resell it, you are agreeing to what the prices are going to be in the first 30 days, the first 60 days, the first 90 days. And so that, because they want to move these properties, so they've got all of that stuff lined up. So it basically comes down to that you're in the driver's seat, that you know exactly what it's going to be, how it's going to be, all of that kind of good stuff. So that's part of the reason probably that there are cash buyers that are showing as a healthy portion of who's buying houses and that kind of thing too, because you do have those what we call iBuyers out there, or institutional buyers that are out there that are buying these houses just like you would take your car to the dealer that you're going to turn it into and buy your new car. So I don't think it's a negative. I think that it's a positive. It gives people more options. If you're in that situation, and there are many people that are, that, they get a job transfer and they don't necessarily have that transfer package that helps them sell their house. And so this actually helps you when it comes to a time to do that you can do that. If you're in a new construction and you're going to be buying a new house and it's dependent on your house selling, we had somebody recently that they had $75,000 down on a new house that they were purchasing, and the only way they could buy it is if they sold their previous house. And so they had some people that were marketing for them, and it wasn't really going well and everything. And so we were able to step in with them, get them what they needed. They took a little bit of a pay cut, like it was that 5% fee that they had to pay. But basically the bottom line is that in paying that 5% fee, what they were able to do is they were able to net 50,000 because they were gonna, so it cost them about 25,000 because their house was worth $500,000 to sell that house more than what they thought it was going to, but they didn't lose 75. They actually kept that 50. That 75 that was going towards that new house, and they were able to move on and get where they wanted to go. And so everything was good for them. So basically, it's not for everybody, but there is about 20% of the market that does not want to have people in their house. They don't want to go through the traditional methods. And so that's what we're going to find. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. This is Laura Peterson. I'm your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio. I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty, and to discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I did find some more good news when it comes to Florida and housing and why we stay where we're at. And Florida does lead the nation in skilled job growth. So that wasn't always the case. Everybody always thought that Florida was just, theme parks, beaches, and basically retirement homes is kind of what everybody always thought. But basically, we do top the scorecard for the third time in a decade by our focus on workforce education and high-demand job training. So basically, when it comes down to it, and basically the talent attraction scorecard for 2025 were the highest, with several local cities helping drive the state to the top. And it's our third time in the top spot in the past decade. Texas, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada round out the top 5. And it evaluates all 50 states and more than 900 metropolitan and micropolitan areas across 7 equally weighted components, including overall job and college growth, regional competitiveness, attraction of earners, and attraction of prime age talent, which is between 25 and 54. And so basically that Florida set an ambitious goal to be number 1 in workforce education by 2030, and we continue to march toward this achievement, said Governor Ron DeSantis. And we're not just preparing for the future, we're ahead of schedule, building a workforce ready for high demand, high-wage careers today. So 7 Florida cities are metropolitan, ranked in the top 10 among municipalities, including Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach area at number 3. Orlando, Kissimmee, Sanford is number 4. Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, Destin is number 5. Northport, Bradenton, Sarasota is at number 7, and Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater was at number 8. So with all of that going on, that's right here, obviously in our backyard, that we're number 4. Not a surprise at all with everything that's going on here, with everything that's growing and all of the building and everything that's being done. And Florida being such an attractive state to come to for a lot of people, that's absolutely, what we would expect. And so it's good to see everything coming to fruition about all of that. And so that's really, really good in regards to what we're looking for. So one of the things that I want to talk about now are the must-have features for outdoor living spaces. So outdoor spaces with comfy seating, lighting, and indoor-outdoor flow both boosts enjoyment and resale value, making homes more sale ready. So a poll of more than 1,000 homeowners conducted by Thumbtack found that 29% of the respondents intended to spend as much as $5,000 improving their outdoor spaces. There's much to gain from upgrading the outdoor spaces in addition to the improved functionality and additional usage, but basically that it goes to help improve resale value. A 2021 survey, a little bit old, but still out there, conducted of real estate agents by HomeLight found that a new patio provided an average return on investment of 109%. Now that is really, really big because, there are usually no ROIs on home improvement projects that are anywhere near 100, let alone over 100. So basically, multifunctionality is what you want to have. Seamless connectivity to the interior designs, comfortable seating, lighting, and all of that kind of good stuff. So basically that's kind of what the bottom line is when we're looking at what people want in an outdoor space. I think it definitely makes a difference, especially people that are coming from out of town. They know or think that they're going to spend a boatload of time outside, and maybe not so much in the summer unless it's got a pool. But when it comes to be this time of year and for the next, several months, until it gets to be extremely warm again, people do use that outdoor space and they like to have it. So whether they're out there grilling or just hanging out in those, usually in our area, screened in areas, that's really what people are looking for. So we want to make sure that, it looks its best. But basically, when people are looking at houses, the number one thing that they look at is that curb appeal when they're coming up to the front. You can't emphasize that enough because I've had so many people that I've been with, buyers, that we've had appointments to go see multiple homes, and a lot of times when I'm going and looking with a buyer, I like to take that Band-Aid off quick, meaning that we're going to go look at house after house. And a lot of that comes from when I'm working with buyers from out of town, and time is, really short for a lot of people. So they want to squeeze in and make sure that they're finding the right home as quickly as possible. And for the average person, it takes between 8 and 10 homes that they need to look at before they make a decision. So if you can get that done quicker, then why would you not want to do that? And really when you do that and you go house to house to house, you'd think they would all blend together. And for the most part, they may, but what happens is that one of them stands out and then you go, oh, that's the one. And so basically that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that one that's going to stand out. I was looking with somebody a couple of weeks ago and we looked at 10 houses there was only one community that we were looking at. So we were able to do this in 2 hours. We looked at 10 houses. It's about every 15 minutes. But really, when some of these were only like 2 or 3 minutes away, it didn't take that much time. And basically what happened is the first house that we went into, they really, really liked. And we spent about a half hour in that house. So I was thinking, oh gosh, okay, we might be off base for this time. But then we started going to the other ones. They didn't like them at all. And so it was just like boom, 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 just to make sure that they had actually looked at all of them to make sure that that first one was the one that they wanted. It ended up being the one that they wanted, and we went ahead and were able to make strides on that, and actually they're closing on that very shortly. So basically the bottom line is on that is that but my point on that is that the curb appeal is really important, because when you drive up to a house, there are many times where they just go, oh, we don't even need to walk in. We already know we don't like it. And sometimes there are homeowners that are there and that have gone to a lot of trouble. So, out of respect for them, they still go look at it, but they've already decided before they got into the house. And so that's why I always tell people you need to make sure that you do have that curb appeal, that you have that when they pull up that they want to at least go in. And that's basically the bottom line, because if they don't go in, you're not going to get the sale for sure. And that's not what we're looking for when you're a seller. And so maybe then you end up being, hey, I want to go with that 5% where somebody else is going to do that job for me, because I don't want to constantly have my house ready and all of that kind of good stuff that I was talking about in the last segment. But basically, when it comes down to it, the bottom line is that, you want to put your best foot forward when you have your house on the market. And as a buyer, you're going to look for that one that's going to stand out, that you go, oh, this is the one. This is what I've been looking for. And that's what we strive for day in and day out, which is what makes us, I think, special. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you after the break. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Laura Peterson. I'm your host of Central Florida Real Estate Radio, and I'm from Your Home Sold Guaranteed Realty. To discuss the sale of your home, you can call or text 407-566-2555. That's 407-566-2555. So I was saying in the last segment that what makes us special is that we find you that house that you want, or we get your house sold. Well, yes and no. Because basically, just finding the house or just finding the buyer and everything is a very small portion of really what we do. I think we added up at one point all of the things that you have to do as a realtor to make sure that a house gets sold, or anybody has to do to get a house get sold. And it comes down to, I think, in the neighborhood of between 150 and 175 things that need to be done in order to get a home sold. So that's a lot. And when people get into it, they don't really realize all of the things that they have to do. I remember I was talking to a gentleman, several years ago, and they were looking for a house. They were selling their house. I had met with them. They were going to sell their house in, I think it was Winter Garden, and they were moving to Geneva because that was where their kids lived. And so they were just kind of really taking their time, and they really didn't want to sell their house until they had found that property in Geneva. And so it ends up, they had, their son had told everybody, hey, my parents are moving here. They would talk to their neighbors about it. Well, the neighbors decided to move. And so they decided that the parents decided to buy their house. So they thought, hey, we don't need a realtor, because it's just, we've already got the house, we've got the deal, we've agreed to everything. It's not going to be a big deal. So what happened then is, then after they sold that house, after they bought that house, they were going to sell their house. So they called me and we talked about it, and I said, oh, and where are you going? And they told me, oh, we'd had this. And they said, and it was the biggest nightmare. They said, we thought we could do it without a realtor, and we thought that it was all going to be very simple and clean and everything. But we ran into little deals on the inspection, and then, there were little things with the title and all of that kind of stuff. It ended up being a lot more time, energy, and effort than we ever thought it would be. We were friends with these people. We're not friends, but our relationship is strained, and all of that kind of stuff, because they didn't use somebody to help them, like myself, that really does it. And so, basically, when I'm talking about the stats and I go over the monthly stats, one of the unbelievable figures in Florida stats are the number of pendings versus the number that close. Now, pendings are the ones that are under contract, and closed are the ones that actually are sold. So I'm using real estate terms here, and I apologize. But basically what has happened is that the number of properties that are pending versus that are under contract versus the ones that are closed, about 40% of the houses that go under contract do not sell on that contract. So they might get another contract and everything like that. But that, in my opinion, is very sad, very unfortunate, very hard to deal with. Because, once you have your house under contract and you have to be out of there by the time that it sells. And so you got to know where you're going. You've got all your plans made. You do this, that, and the other thing in order to make that happen. And basically, if it falls apart, then you're like going, oh my gosh, now I've got two places. I've got that real estate catch-22 where I'm owning two places, or, I'm going to lose this place that I thought I was going to because I'm not going to sell my house right now and all of that kind of good stuff. So I did have that happen with only one person, and this was several years ago, and they just called me last week, and because I did work through it and I got it resolved so that I found a new buyer that closed within a week or two. I think it was probably about 10 days longer than what they were supposed to. And they ended up getting into a new build. It was during the time when the prices were going up, and they had locked in a really low rate. And if they didn't buy that house, then the builder was going to sell it for 50 to 100,000 more. I don't remember which. And so basically, they needed to get it done. They did get it done, and they were very thankful. So they're looking at selling the house that they bought from that builder about 3 or 4 years ago, and they're calling me to do it because they remember how I was able to work through everything. But, basically when it comes down to it, what I want to let everybody know that who you work with matters. And I think that it's very important for you to know that. And so you've got to look at track records. You've got to look at what's going on. You've got to look at experience. You've got to look at, your comfortability in regards to knowing that they're going to get the job done. And so, they were selling that house that I was working on them with. And like I said, I did find another buyer immediately. Their cost was $1,000, and that was it in regards to the whole scheme of things. And what happened, and the reason it fell apart, which was very unfortunate for that buyer, because he would have been able to buy it with another lender, but he went through a traditional bank, and I'm not going to say who it was. But what had happened is that this guy was making $70,000. He was making $35,000 base and a $35,000 in bonuses is what he was made, and he had done that for like 5 years. And so what had happened, this was going on in February where he was buying this house. In January, his company said, you've been making this $70,000 for so many years. We don't want to make it as a 35 plus 35 bonus. We're just going to go ahead and make it a $70,000 base pay. And that's it. And that's great. And so he's like, yeah, that sounds good. That's not a problem and everything like that. But it was a problem for the bank, because the bank that he was using didn't, they were going strictly by the book and not explaining. They didn't want to explain what had happened. And so they denied his loan because he went to salary. They averaged his salary for the last 3 years, which was that $35,000, and he had only started the 70, so they didn't want to count that. And then because he wasn't getting any bonuses, they took his bonuses away from his pay, even though it was on his tax returns, even though it was everywhere. So as a result of that, what happened is that he only made 50% of the money, according to that bank, than he actually made, and they denied the loan the day of closing, because what they did is they had everything all dotted the I's, crossed the T's and everything like that, but they did that final income verification check on the day of closing, and they called and they said, does this guy still work here? Yep, he sure does. Okay, is he still getting the base pay plus bonuses? Oh no, he's just getting the base pay, but it's the same as the base pay plus bonuses. Nope, not good enough for that bank. And they denied his loan. And so that was, the seller had already moved out. They were looking forward to closing the next day on their new home. They were in a hotel that night, or an Airbnb, I believe they were. And so, it just caused all kinds of chaos. And so, like I said, I did find a new buyer immediately, and it was only $1,000 difference in their pocket than what it had been previously. And so it was, in their minds, a win-win from everything of what was going on, which we obviously knew. And basically, it was a sad day for that buyer, because we did know a lender that we had talked about that if they could wait 30 days, that he still could have bought it, but they couldn't wait those 30 days. And so, that was one that I had fall apart, but that's one of the rare ones that I've had fall apart, as opposed to the average that's at 40. So I've kind of gone on about that, but basically it does come down to, who you work with, and just make sure that you choose wisely. Feel free to give us a call, even if you don't use us, and, pick my brain. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody at any point in time. So in order to get in touch with us, you can call or text 407-566-2555. You can find us online at centralfloridarealestateradio.com, and we'll see you next week. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.